New information in the case of a 12-year-old Ohio boy shot and killed by a police officer after a witness saw the boy playing with a toy gun. Grand jurors last month determining the shooting of Tamir Rice was justified. Officer Timothy Lohman was not indicted. However, we're now learning that those grand jurors did not vote on specific criminal charges. Tamir Rice's family telling Fox News they're planning to ask the Justice Department to hire an independent prosecutor. Here is Tamir Rice's great-uncle's message to the officer who shot his nephew.
Timothy, you made a mistake. And we know that you can't, openly say that. And our family has prayed for him. Because I know anytime something like this happens, it must be tragic for him as well. So we're praying for him and his family, that they have a healing process as well while we go through our healing process.
It's Michael Petty speaking to Officer Timothy Lohman. Joining us now is David Wool. He is the defense attorney, and Ambrosio Rodriguez, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. Thanks to both of you for being here.
Hi, Arthel.
Okay, so in this case, the shooting was deemed justified, which means the grand jury does not vote on criminal charges against the officer involved. However, a lawyer for the Rice family said that they were promised that there would be a vote no matter what. Ambrosio, I'll start with you. Would Prosecutor Timothy McGinty have a reason to stick to the law and not have the grand jury take a vote?
Well, the law is such that once the jury decided that it was a justifiable homicide, a justified shooting, they were never going to get to what charges to indict the officer with. Once you make that decision, once the grand jury made that decision, there was no going forward as a matter of law. And it's not surprising either, given the fact that it came out in the news that the DA themselves were not asking for charges. In fact, they told the grand jury that they thought that the shooting was justified. Now, if the DA in a grand jury situation is telling them that the police officer was justified, it should be a surprise to no one that the grand jury did not indict this officer.
Okay,
I mean,
let me pull up a statement.
It was stacked against Tamir Rice from the beginning.
It was stacked, excuse me, repeat that, I'm sorry, what did you say?
I'm sorry, it was stacked against Tamir Rice from the beginning.
Let me pull up a statement from the Rice family attorney. He says, quote, "We were assured throughout the process that a recommendation regarding criminal charges would be made and that a vote would be taken by the grand jury." So, David, I ask you, does that broken promise change this case legally? And is it possible, I don't know, to revisit charges against Officer Lohman, or would that maybe fall under double jeopardy? And what about the prosecutor, Timothy McGinty? Is he immune to legal charges?
Yeah, I mean, look, they had it right in the first place. I mean, there's a two-step process. Somebody may have told them wrong information, but there's a two-step process, a determination of whether or not these officers were in reasonable fear of great bodily injury or death when they actually shot that young man. And the videotape, the surveillance videotape, very clearly shows him pacing back and forth with a pellet gun that looked exactly like a real gun. Pellet guns are actually considered deadly weapons in any event. When the officers pulled up, he brandished the weapon, took it out of his waistband, and pointed it at him. So it was a good shoot, so to speak, a tragic shoot, but a good one because they were acting in reasonable defense of their lives. So you'd never get to whether it should be murder or manslaughter if you find that it's a justifiable shoot. Now, as far as charges go beyond that, there could be a civil rights case in as far as federal charges go, or there could be a civil suit against the prosecutor, but both of those are going to be very difficult because the civil case, as far as civil rights go, requires some showing of racial animus against Tamir Rice, and I don't think they're going to be able to show that.
Okay, let me jump in here because there is a report that said although the original 911 call mentioned the suspect was probably a youngster and the weapon was probably a toy, the police dispatcher omitted those details. So I'm going to go back to you, Ambrosio. What do you think of that? Because your cohort there is saying that this was justified and there's no recourse for the family. What do you say?
Well, I don't think it was justified for a lot of reasons, but the fact that that information was not relayed to the officer is very important and would go to their defense. There's a different issue as to whether or not a grand jury indicts or a full jury, that is in a jury trial, a jury of 12, would convict him or not. It's a different standard of proof. The question for a grand jury is not whether he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. It's whether or not there's probable cause for an indictment. And that is a very big difference in proof. I mean, it's a difference between bus fare and money for a brand new car.
Well,
hang on, Ambrosio. Let me jump in 1 second, David, because, Ambrosio, I have to correct you. I read to you that the original 911 call did mention that the suspect was probably a youngster and the weapon was probably a toy. That was mentioned initially.
Let me just say this. That would involve total
I'm sorry, so that changed because originally...
Here's the problem you have.
Hang on. Stop, guys. Stop, guys. 1 second. Ambrosio, you, and then David, I promise you I'll give you the last word. Go ahead, Ambrosio.
Okay. If the press reports had changed, that information was actually relayed to the officers before they arrived at the scene, that is damning evidence that I don't understand why the DA's office did not look at that and use that in order to question whether or not this was a justifiable shooting or not.
This is why they didn't, because that was total speculation. The only way to tell that pellet gun from a real gun was to look at the diameter of the barrel, and you can't possibly do that from closer than 2 or 3 feet away.
I have to cut you off because otherwise the computer will. I'm sorry, guys. Thanks for your time. We're back after this break.
Okay.